Disclaimer: this video is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised due to the unsettling nature of the events depicted. While the story is based on documented accounts and real-life interviews, some elements may be dramatized for storytelling. We do not encourage or endorse any form of trespassing, paranormal provocation, or unsafe exploration of haunted locations. It began with a single voicemail, 30 seconds of static, a faint whisper buried beneath the white noise, and the sound of a child softly crying. That's all it took to shatter the quiet life of Elise Becker. For years, the Becker family had lived in peaceful seclusion in the remote town of Mora's Edge, nestled deep in the woods of northern Pennsylvania. Their home, a weathered colonial farmhouse built in the early 1800s, had always stood with a kind of eerie grace, its ivy-covered walls hiding generations of forgotten stories. But no one could have imagined the darkness that would awaken inside those walls. No one, until now. Locals rarely spoke about the Becker property, not because they didn't know what had happened, but because they did. The house had earned a reputation over the years, whispered about in hushed tones between neighbors, mentioned only when someone went missing, or when strange lights appeared in the woods. Children dared each other to run up to the gate at night, swearing they heard someone, or something, call their names from inside. Most brushed it off as old town legends. Just stories. Until the Becker haunting made it impossible to deny that something was truly wrong. Elise Becker had inherited the house after the sudden death of her uncle, Martin Becker, a recluse who was rarely seen in town. According to official reports, Martin died of natural causes. But Elise knew something wasn't right. His journals, found scattered across the attic floor, told a different story. Pages filled with drawings of symbols, notes about voices in the walls, and long, frantic entries describing nightly visits from the woman in the mirror. The townspeople warned Elise not to move in. They told her to sell the house, to leave it behind. But she was determined to find out what had happened to her uncle, and what was really hidden in that house. From the moment Elise stepped inside, she said she felt it. The air was heavier. The silence wasn't silent, it was watching. Doors would creak open on their own. The sound of footsteps echoed from empty hallways. One night, she woke to the smell of smoke, only to find the house cold and dark, the air thick with whispers she couldn't quite understand. Her dog refused to enter the upstairs bedroom. Pictures fell off the walls without reason. And that voicemail, the one with the crying child, it was just the beginning. Through recovered footage, personal recordings, and interviews with those closest to the case, this full paranormal documentary takes you inside the disturbing Becker haunting. Witnesses include former neighbors, local historians, and a team of paranormal investigators who attempted to document the activity. What they found was beyond explanation. One investigator left mid-session, refusing to ever return. Another claimed he was followed home by something that wasn't human. Elise's own mental and physical health began to deteriorate rapidly. Sleep paralysis, unexplained bruises, a growing fear that she was never alone. The history of the Becker house is riddled with tragedy. Before the Beckers owned it, it was home to the Holloway family, who lost all three of their children under mysterious circumstances in the 1930s. The local paper at the time reported them as tragic accidents. But according to an unpublished letter found hidden behind the fireplace, their mother believed something in the house had taken them. That same letter described a mirror in the guest room that would reflect not your own image, but the face of someone long dead. Many believe the haunting is tied to this mirror, a grotesque, antique relic framed in blackened wood, carved with symbols no one has been able to translate. Elise found it covered by a sheet in the basement. She brought it upstairs, thinking it was just an old family heirloom. But from that day on, the activity intensified. Lights would flicker every time she walked by it. She started hearing voices coming from it. And in one particularly chilling moment caught on camera, Elise swears she saw her uncle's reflection in the glass, standing behind her. But when she turned around, the room was empty. This haunting doesn't follow the rules. It doesn't limit itself to footsteps and flickering lights. The presence in the Becker house seemed to choose Elise, targeting her thoughts, her dreams, her memories. She began writing in her sleep, leaving cryptic notes on her bedroom walls that she couldn't remember writing. At one point, she disappeared for 2 days, only to be found in the woods behind the house, barefoot, dazed, and unable to explain where she had been. When shown footage of her own disappearance, Elise didn't recognize herself. Her voice was different. Her eyes, empty. The team that worked on this documentary captured hours of footage, much of which remains too disturbing to release publicly. But what we can show you tonight is the raw, unfiltered truth behind the Becker haunting, a case that continues to baffle experts, terrify locals, and challenge everything we think we know about the paranormal. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, one thing is certain: there are places in this world that remember. Places where the past is not buried, but waiting. Watching. And as for Elise Becker, well, her story didn't end when the camera stopped rolling. In fact, just weeks ago, she contacted our team again. She says the activity has returned, stronger, darker, and more personal than ever. She believes the mirror has something to do with it. But here's the thing: when we returned to the house, the mirror was gone. No one can explain how it vanished. The basement was sealed shut. No signs of a break-in. And the only clue left behind was a single handprint on the wall, small, childlike, and burned into the plaster. What really happened in the Becker house? Where did the mirror go? And what followed Elise after she left? Tonight, we invite you to step into the unknown and witness the full story for yourself. But be warned, some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Elise didn't speak much during the first interview. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, hands clenched in her lap, her fingers twitching like she was playing an invisible piano. She looked exhausted, pale, sunken, with dark circles etched so deep they seemed like bruises. When she did speak, it was slow and cautious, like she was afraid of being overheard. She didn't mention the mirror right away. She just said, "It watches me," and left it at that. When pressed, she wouldn't say what it was. She only muttered, "It knows when I'm alone." The production team set up motion-activated cameras throughout the house, hallways, the attic, the basement, and the infamous upstairs guest room. The first night was uneventful. No movement, no strange sounds. Just an oppressive stillness that settled over every frame like a blanket too heavy to shake off. The second night, things changed. At precisely 3:17 a.m., a soft creaking echoed down the main hallway. The guest room door opened by itself, slowly, silently, as if welcoming something in. The footage caught no visible figure, but there was movement. The temperature sensor dropped by 15 degrees in under 10 seconds, and the camera audio picked up a faint knocking, 3 short raps, followed by a breathless whisper, unintelligible but undeniably human. Elise was asleep downstairs at the time. She said she didn't hear anything, but the next morning, she found muddy footprints in the hallway. Small ones. Barefoot. A child's. They led from the guest room to her bedroom door and stopped there. She didn't have children. She never did. When asked how she felt seeing them, she paused and said, "It's not the first time." We found an old-school photograph tucked into one of Martin Becker's journals. 4 children, standing in front of the Becker house. Only 3 of them were identified on the back: James, Clara, and Thomas Holloway, 1931. The 4th child, a girl standing apart from the others, was simply labeled with a question mark. Her eyes were blurred in the photo, not from age or damage, but deliberately scratched out with something sharp. Elise swore she saw that same girl at her bedroom window once, just standing there in the rain, not moving. When she ran outside to confront her, there was nothing. just wet grass and silence. In the weeks that followed, the house seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Doors refused to stay closed. Mirrors fogged up in the absence of heat. Elise's voice recorders would turn on by themselves in the middle of the night, capturing strange static and fragments of sentences. One recording caught a soft female voice whispering, "Don't look in the mirror. Don't let her see you." No one could determine the source of the voice. Elise insisted she never said those words. The voice didn't even sound like her. There was something wrong with the basement. Every time the crew tried to film down there, the camera batteries drained within minutes. Audio equipment glitched. Lights flickered even with portable generators. The smell of mildew was thick and constant, but deeper than that, there was something else, an undercurrent of rot, like something long dead had been buried behind the stone walls. Elise said she avoided the basement after finding the mirror there, but when she finally agreed to take us down, the air turned so cold it burned. The floorboards groaned beneath our feet like they were warning us to leave. In the far corner, where the shadows were the darkest, a section of the wall had crumbled. Behind it was a small, narrow space, a crawlspace no wider than a coffin. Inside were remnants of old, dusty toys, a torn blanket, and what looked like bones. Animal, most likely. At least that's what we told ourselves. Elise stood frozen at the entrance. She said she'd never seen it before. Her flashlight flickered and went out. That was the moment she turned to us and said, "She used to live here." She told me. She wouldn't explain who she was, only that the voice started after she brought the mirror upstairs. At first, it was just whispers, harmless things, like a child talking to an imaginary friend. But then the whispers turned into commands. Things like, "Don't answer the door," or "Turn off the lights and wait." Elise obeyed. She didn't know why. She said it felt like not listening would upset something, like there would be consequences. We later learned that Martin Becker also heard voices in the house. His journal entries grew more erratic in the months before his death. He wrote about a recurring dream, always the same. He was standing in the woods behind the house, and there was a woman with her back to him. She never turned around. She just whispered, "You let her in." Then the trees would start screaming. That's how he described it, the trees screamed. Elise had the same dream years later, without ever reading his journals. She even described the same woman. When we showed her the journal entry, she broke down and left the room. There's something strange about the woods behind the Becker property. Every investigation team that's spent time there has come back with stories. Some said they got lost despite using GPS. Others claimed to see figures darting between the trees, shadows that disappeared when approached. One cameraman caught footage of what looked like someone standing still among the trees, just watching. But when he turned to face them, the figure was gone. He was so shaken he refused to continue the project. He quit the next day, packed his bags, and moved out of state. He wouldn't even take his last paycheck. Animals avoid the Becker woods. Birds won't nest in the trees closest to the house. There's an unnatural quietness in the area. No wind. No bugs. Just stillness. One investigator described it as being inside a snow globe, completely detached from the world outside. And yet, people claim to see movement. Shapes flitting across their peripheral vision. One local teenager who tried to camp out in the woods said he heard a lullaby being hummed in the middle of the night. A soft, feminine voice, singing in a language he didn't understand. The deeper we dug, the more tangled the story became. There were rumors that the land the house was built on once belonged to a woman accused of witchcraft in the 1700s. No records confirm this, but the town's archives have several references to a midwife of the pines, a woman said to live alone in the woods, offering cures and casting curses. She vanished after a fire destroyed the early settlement. Some say her body was never found. Others say she never died at all. Is it her? The woman in the mirror? Is she the voice in Elise's head? Or is it something else, something older, nameless? Elise's mental state began to deteriorate rapidly after we uncovered the crawlspace. She would speak in her sleep, guttural, foreign words none of us recognized. She began drawing again, obsessively. Strange symbols, identical to the ones found in her uncle's journals, began to appear on the walls, etched into the wood with nails. One symbol in particular kept repeating, an eye, surrounded by thorns, always drawn near mirrors. Elise said it was a warning. She sees through them, she whispered once. She lives in the glass. We installed new mirrors to test the theory. Every single one cracked within a week. Some shattered without anyone near them. One morning, Elise woke up with a piece of mirror embedded in her palm. She had no idea how it got there. She just said she was trying to get out. The last time we visited the house, the energy felt different. Heavier. Hostile. As we packed up the last of our gear, a team member noticed a new message scrawled into the dust of the upstairs hallway window. 4 words, I never left here. No one admitted to writing it. No one could explain how it got there. That was the last day Elise stayed in the house. She left with nothing but a single backpack and hasn't returned since. But the story isn't over. Because last week, Elise called us again. And she said the mirror came back. The mirror was waiting on her front porch. Wrapped in an old, gray sheet, it stood propped against the wooden siding of Elise's new apartment, like someone had gently placed it there in the dead of night. No note, no explanation, no signs of forced entry. She hadn't told anyone where she moved, not even us. And yet, somehow, it had found her. She called the moment she saw it, her voice shaking, her breath uneven. It's her. I don't know how, but she knows I'm here. We rushed over, expecting to find Elise in one of her distressed episodes. But when we arrived, the mirror was real. Same blackened wood frame, same twisted carvings, although now, the surface had changed. It wasn't just reflective. It rippled, almost like water, as if the glass were breathing. Elise refused to touch it. She claimed that ever since it reappeared, she hadn't slept. At night, she would hear knocking from the walls. In the early hours, her door would creak open by itself. Sometimes, she'd wake up to find all her kitchen drawers pulled out, their contents arranged in a spiral on the floor. No footprints. No evidence of anyone entering. Only that heavy feeling again, that she was never truly alone. The decision was made to store the mirror in a locked storage unit 2 towns over. We triple-locked the door, set up cameras, and left it there with a deep sense of dread. It stayed quiet for a few days. Elise began to feel better, started eating, sleeping again. The bruises on her arms faded. She even laughed once. Just once. Then the camera feed in the storage unit went dark. The footage stopped at 2:44 a.m. on a Tuesday. One final frame showed a blurred silhouette standing in the far corner, nowhere near the mirror. No one could agree on what the figure was. It was too tall to be Elise, too thin to be any of us, and it seemed wrong. The proportions were off. Limbs slightly too long. Neck slightly too bent. It was like looking at a shadow stretched beyond what nature allows. When the team went to check the unit the next day, they found the locks intact, the cameras fried, and the mirror missing. That same night, Elise woke up to find it standing in her bedroom. This time, she didn't scream. She stared at it in silence for nearly an hour before dialing. "She's not just in the mirror anymore," she whispered. "She's in the house." This was the moment we knew things had crossed a line. Up until now, it had all been strange, disturbing, yes, but somehow survivable. But this was something different. This was escalation. The haunting was no longer bound by location. It had attached itself to Elise. And worse, it was growing stronger. We brought in a psychic medium, someone recommended by a former investigator of the Becker house who refused to ever speak about what he saw. The medium, a soft-spoken woman named Lorna, arrived with quiet resolve and a black satchel of tools. Crystals. Bells. Herbs. A weathered notebook filled with symbols not unlike the ones Elise had been drawing. As soon as she stepped into Elise's apartment, her demeanor changed. She became tense. Silent. She refused to touch the mirror. "It's not a window anymore," she told us, voice low. "It's a door." Lorna tried to perform a cleansing, but the moment she lit her sage bundle, every light in the apartment burst. The fire alarm wailed for 5 seconds, then fell silent, though no smoke had triggered it. The flames didn't go out, they changed color, burning cold blue until they extinguished themselves. Then the mirror cracked. Not shattered, just a hairline fracture down the middle. Elise screamed. Blood began to trickle from her nose. Lorna fainted, and when she awoke, she couldn't remember anything from the last hour. All she said was, "She doesn't want to leave." We asked Elise again, who was she? The girl? The woman in the mirror? The voice in her head? Elise hesitated, eyes wide with a kind of haunted clarity. "They're the same. But they're not alone anymore." Something else came through. The haunting had evolved. It wasn't just visions, whispers, and movements anymore. Elise started experiencing time slips. Hours would vanish. One afternoon, she sat down to eat lunch and looked up to find it was suddenly 2 a.m. Another time, she took a shower, and when she stepped out, the mirror showed her wearing the clothes she wore as a child, clothes she hadn't seen in decades. She touched her reflection. It smiled back, without her. Meanwhile, we discovered something disturbing in the Becker property's history. The house had been built atop what was once a crossroads, an ancient trail where multiple tribal territories met. According to old folklore, that spot was considered a boundary between worlds. A place where the veil was thin. Our researcher found a journal entry from a missionary in the 1700s who described local tribes warning settlers never to build there. "The forest doesn't forget," it read. "She walks between the trees. She watches from the still water. When the air goes silent, she is near." The she again. Over and over, across generations, across languages. Always unnamed. Always feared. That's when we noticed something even stranger. Everyone involved in the documentary, crew members, editors, interviewees, began experiencing anomalies. Lost time. Nightmares. Electrical issues in their homes. One crew member, David, reported hearing Elise's voice in his baby monitor. Elise was asleep across town when it happened. Another technician claimed his computer refused to play the raw footage from the Becker house unless he unplugged it from the internet. He said he saw someone else's face in the footage, someone who wasn't there when we filmed. One of the scariest incidents happened during an editing session. As we reviewed old interview footage of Elise describing her first encounter with the mirror, the audio glitched. For just a second, a deep, inhuman voice overlaid hers. Slowed, distorted, but unmistakable. "You let her in." It wasn't just Martin's dream. It was a message. A warning. Or maybe a curse. Elise began changing in subtle, terrifying ways. Her eyes sometimes appeared darker on camera, like something was dilating them beyond normal range. Her voice would echo strangely in audio recordings. And then came the drawings. Hundreds of them. Sketches of a girl with hollow eyes. Of the mirror shattering and revealing a void behind it. Of Elise herself, standing beside a figure with no face, its long fingers pressed against her shoulder. She said she didn't remember drawing any of it. We tried to keep her safe. We even tried taking her away, far from any reflective surface, far from any remnants of the Becker estate. But she said it didn't matter anymore. It's in me, she said. I dream of her every night now. But she doesn't talk to me anymore. She watches. She waits. There was one final straw, the night Elise's apartment building caught fire. It wasn't a large fire. Contained quickly. But it began in her closet, where she had hidden the mirror behind boxes and blankets. The firefighters found no cause, no faulty wiring, no candles. And no mirror. It was gone by the time they got there. The only thing they found was a child's shoe, burned at the edge, sitting in the ashes. That night, Elise sent us one last recording. A voicemail. 30 seconds of silence, followed by a child humming softly. The same lullaby we'd heard from the woods behind the Becker house. At the very end of the clip, Elise's voice, soft, tired, barely above a whisper, I think she's trying to come through me now. Then the call ended. No one has seen Elise since. Her phone was found on a bench outside an abandoned church 15 miles from her apartment. Inside the church, scrawled on the walls in soot, were symbols we'd seen before, circles, eyes, thorns. And beneath the altar, a cracked shard of glass. A single eye scratched into its center. We don't know where Elise went. We don't know what happened to her. But some nights, when we review the footage for this documentary, we swear she's still there, just for a frame. A shadow. A reflection. Watching from the edge of the screen. And when the room goes quiet, too quiet, you can almost hear it. 3 soft knocks. Followed by a voice, faint and close. She never left. The voicemail kept playing in our minds long after we'd listened to it. That humming. Soft, childlike, but wrong, off-pitch and looping at strange intervals, like it wasn't a song meant to soothe but to summon. We played it back repeatedly, each time noticing something new. In the background, beneath the melody, there were faint whispers, layered and distant, like dozens of voices speaking at once, but always just out of reach. One audio engineer ran the clip through a spectrogram. Buried in the noise, barely visible in the waveforms, were the words, "You opened the door." The team tried to move on, but something had shifted permanently. It wasn't just Elise anymore. Whatever she had carried with her, whatever she had awakened, it had spread. We weren't dealing with a haunted location. We were dealing with something that followed. Something that chose who to haunt. One editor started having seizures while working on a rough cut of the footage. He had no history of epilepsy. Another team member vanished for 3 days, only to be found walking along a desolate highway barefoot, whispering "She sees me" over and over again. He didn't recognize anyone. His shoes were never found. Still, we couldn't stop. There was something compelling us to keep going. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was obsession. Maybe it was her. We kept the investigation quiet, moving operations to a small studio where no mirrors were allowed. Every reflective surface was covered, cameras were taped with cloth when not in use, and even phones were turned screen-side down. But the fear only grew. At night, we'd hear sounds inside the building, footsteps where no one walked, static crackling through our audio monitors, doors opening despite being padlocked shut. One night, a production assistant found a series of childlike handprints on the inside of the second-floor windows. We were 3 floors up. No ladders. No access. Then came the phone calls. They started the same way every time, static, then silence, then breathing, slow and deliberate. One of us would say hello, and a child's voice would answer, almost singing, "Come see her." The calls came at random times, sometimes multiple times a day. Always from blocked numbers. Always ending the same way, with the sound of glass cracking, followed by a soft whisper, "She's coming." We tried to trace the calls. We even changed numbers, switched phones, moved to different service providers. It didn't matter. The calls kept coming. It was as if we were being warned. Or taunted. We didn't know what to do with the footage. Something about it felt dangerous now. Not just because of what it showed, but because of what it might contain. The mirror wasn't just a mirror. It had become something else, a medium, a transmitter, a conduit for something far older and far more malevolent than any of us understood. Watching it felt like participating in a ritual. A signal. A summoning. Then someone found the final entry in Martin Becker's journal. It wasn't in the house. It wasn't in the archives. It was mailed to us. No return address. Just a weathered envelope containing a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age. It read, "If you're reading this, it's too late. I thought I could stop her. I thought I could keep her here. But she's not bound anymore. The mirror is only one way. She's in the reflections now. In our thoughts. She knows we're looking. That's all it takes. Don't look for her. Don't say her name. And whatever you do, never dream about her. That's how she finds you. That's how she gets in." The handwriting matched Becker's perfectly. But the strange part? It was dated 2 days before we received it. The more we tried to hide from her, the more she invaded our lives. People began seeing Elise again, on street corners, in store windows, even passing in mirrors. But every time someone called out to her, she vanished. No trace. No footprints. Like she wasn't really there. Just a projection. A lure. We started keeping dream logs, just in case. That's when we noticed a pattern. Every single person involved with the documentary began dreaming the same thing, walking through the woods, alone, hearing a song in the distance. The trees whispering. A mirror resting in the middle of a clearing. Cracked. Waiting. And always, just before waking, they'd see Elise standing beside it. Mouth open. Screaming. But no sound. None of us spoke about the dreams at first. We were too afraid of what it meant that we were all seeing the same thing. But when one of our team members went missing after claiming he saw Elise inside his bathroom mirror, smiling, we knew the nightmares were real. That night, I covered every mirror in my home. It didn't help. That's the terrifying part. The most hopeless part. This thing, it doesn't care where you go. How far you run. It doesn't need a place. It needs attention. The more you think about it, the stronger it becomes. It feeds on fear. On memory. On the simple act of wondering, is she watching me now? The lights in our studio flicker constantly now. Power outages. Hard drives corrupting without explanation. Audio files that play backward on their own. A crew member swears she heard Elise's voice behind her during an interview, clear as day, whispering in her ear. The studio was empty at the time. And then there was the incident during our latest recording session. We had just finished reviewing clips from the Becker basement when the lights cut out. Emergency power kicked in. Only the red glow of our exit sign remained. One of the cameras, left recording by accident, captured something chilling, a tall figure standing motionless in the doorway. No face. Just a dark silhouette, unmoving. Watching. None of us saw it in real time. We only found it during playback. The timestamp matched exactly with the moment we heard a knock on the studio door, 3 soft knocks. We never opened it. There's no sense of safety anymore. Not in daylight, not with company, not even in sleep. It feels like we're being watched through our own eyes. Like we're puppets in some old story that's been told too many times, and the story wants to continue, with or without us. And now we're releasing this documentary. Not because it's finished. Not because the danger is over. But because we feel like we have to. Like something is compelling us. Like there's no other way forward but through the fear. Some of us believe the footage is cursed. Others think it's a warning. A key to understanding whatever ancient force is behind all this. But most of us, we're just scared. Because when you start putting the pieces together, when you follow the trail of Elise, the mirror, the whispers, the dreams, there's no real conclusion. Just a spiral. Downward. Deeper. Into the unknown. And as you watch, as you listen, remember this, she's listening too. The footage we were preparing to release, the one we'd spent months obsessively compiling, editing, analyzing, was gone. Not corrupted. Not stolen. Just missing. Hard drives that once held days of raw footage were now inexplicably blank. Labels erased. Folders empty. The backup drives, carefully stored off-site, had been reduced to a single file. One video. 30 seconds long. A static shot of the Becker house basement. The light swinging gently overhead. Dust motes dancing like ash. And in the corner, barely visible through the darkness, Elise standing perfectly still, eyes closed, lips moving silently. No one could explain how it got there. No one remembered recording it. The team was shaken. We started accusing each other of mistakes, of sabotage, of losing our grip. But deep down, we all knew what it really meant. She didn't want the story told. Or maybe she wanted it told her way. That night, something changed. I woke up gasping, my heart pounding like I had been running for miles. The air felt wrong. Thick. Like it was pressing down on me. Every shadow in my apartment felt alive, like they were moving just enough to be noticed out of the corner of your eye. I turned on every light. They all flickered. I stared at my bathroom door, the only one closed. The only one with a mirror behind it. For over an hour, I didn't move. Then came the knock. Not from the front door. From inside. 3 soft taps, behind the bathroom door. Like fingertips on wood. I grabbed my phone, ready to call someone, anyone, but it had no signal. Only one thing appeared on the screen, a video thumbnail. The same 30-second clip. It had uploaded itself to my gallery. And the title underneath? Asterisk, you let her in. Asterisk, we met the next morning in silence. Everyone looked different, tired, older somehow. Something had passed over us. Through us. The kind of thing you can't shake off, like a film of something unseen clinging to your skin. And that's when Miranda, our researcher, dropped the real bomb. She had been digging into the history of the mirror, trying to trace its origin before the Beckers found it. What she discovered didn't make sense at first. The mirror had been in Becker's family for generations, but it didn't start with them. It wasn't even American. It had been imported from Eastern Europe in the late 1800s, originally belonging to a noble family who mysteriously vanished after a fire consumed their estate. The only survivor, a maid, claimed she saw the family walk into the mirror one by one, smiling, as flames tore through the house. The mirror survived without a scratch. It changed hands repeatedly over the next century. Every owner either died under mysterious circumstances or disappeared without a trace. But the strangest part? Every time the mirror reappeared, it came with someone new. A girl. A woman. A face. Always unnamed. Always silent. And in every case, someone close to the owner began drawing spirals. Just like Elise. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. Miranda found a sketch in an archived diary from 1912. The diary belonged to a young boy institutionalized for schizophrenia. He claimed the mirror girl spoke to him at night, that she told him stories, asked him questions, showed him other worlds. One of his drawings showed a figure, tall, thin, faceless, standing behind a girl with long black hair and blank eyes. Below it was scrawled in shaky handwriting, *, she is not the first. She is the last. * When we compared the girl in the drawing to Elise, the resemblance was chilling. We thought Elise was a victim. What if she wasn't? What if she was the carrier? The medium? The door? Not possessed, but chosen, long before she ever set foot in the Becker house. It would explain the rapid escalation. The intensity of the hauntings. Why the mirror always found her. Why the symbols appeared in her sleep. It wasn't just that Elise was being haunted. Elise was the haunting. The realization shattered us. We were too deep. The more we tried to uncover, the more we fed whatever this was. And it was feeding back on us, on our fear, our curiosity. And now the question none of us wanted to ask sat heavy in the air. Did we bring this to her, or did she bring it to us? The spiral, we realized, was a cycle. A loop. A ritual. Someone is drawn in. Someone is broken. And someone takes her place. Because that's the one part none of the stories ever mentioned, the one rule never written down: she can't move forward unless someone takes her place. And that's when we got the call. A woman, frantic, claiming her daughter had started drawing spirals. That she kept talking about someone named Elise, even though they'd never heard the name before. The daughter said she had dreams of a woman trapped in a mirror. And that the woman told her, "I'm almost out." The address? 6 miles from where Elise disappeared. We went to investigate, of course. We knew we shouldn't. We knew it was exactly what she wanted. But we couldn't help ourselves. It felt inevitable. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The girl was in her room, calmly coloring. Spirals. Circles. Overlapping eyes. Mirrors with shadows standing beside them. When we asked her about Elise, she looked up and said, "She visits me in the mirror. She says she misses you." I asked her what Elise said when she talked to her. She answered, completely calm, that it's your turn now. That night, I couldn't sleep. I covered every reflective surface again, but I could feel her anyway. Not just watching, but waiting. There's this tension, like the air before a storm, stretching tighter and tighter. Every dream feels like a countdown. Every shadow feels intentional. We tried to shut down the project. Tried to delete the footage, burn the notebooks, erase the trace. But it didn't matter. Because now, you're watching this. That's the twist. You've heard her name. You've imagined her face. You've pictured the mirror. You've let her in. Every view, every replay, every whispered retelling, it spreads her. Extends the spiral. Maybe that's why the story never dies. Why it keeps resurfacing. It's not a documentary anymore. It's an invitation. And the scariest part? We're not sure who's watching whom anymore. What would you do in this situation? Would you run? Would you try to fight something you can't touch? Something that lives in dreams, in reflections, in stories? Would you try to help Elise? Do you think the protagonist can survive? Or is that already impossible? We don't have the answers. But one thing we do know, the mirror isn't broken. It never was. It just needed someone else to look. We never meant for it to go this far. What started as a documentary, a simple exploration into a forgotten haunting, had grown into something we couldn't contain. We had tried everything, shutting down production, deleting footage, destroying copies, abandoning the investigation. But each time we thought we'd stopped it, something came back. A voicemail. A shadow in a mirror. A name whispered by someone who shouldn't even know it. Elise. There was one place we hadn't gone. One thing we hadn't dared to do. We'd always danced around it, too afraid to consider the full implications. But it had become clear now. We couldn't end this by running. We had to go back. To where it all began. Back to the Becker house. The property had been officially condemned, its walls rotting, floors warped with age and water damage. The front door was padlocked and chained shut, but the back, always the back, was open. As if it had been waiting. The air inside smelled like mildew and burnt hair. Cold, even in the height of summer. The walls seemed to pulse in the dark, like the house itself was alive, breathing. Hungry. We moved in silence, stepping over broken furniture and scattered photographs. In every frame, the faces were blurred, smeared like someone had dragged a wet brush across them. Except for Elise. Her face was always clear. Unsmiling. Still. We made our way to the basement. No electricity, no lights, just flashlights that flickered no matter how fresh the batteries. The mirror was still there, partially covered by the same old tarp. The spiral Elise had carved was gone. Sanded off? Erased? Or had it moved? We stood in a circle, our breathing loud in the silence, unsure who would make the first move. And then the mirror blinked. It didn't crack, didn't glow, just blinked. Like an eye waking up. The room darkened, not from loss of light but from loss of space. Shadows stretched along the walls, and the air thinned. Something heavy pressed against our chests, pushing us closer to the glass. One of our crew, James, stepped forward, drawn by something none of us could see. "Don't," I whispered. But he didn't stop. He touched the mirror. The moment his fingertips met the glass, his body jerked like he'd been shocked. His eyes rolled back, mouth opening in a silent scream. He collapsed without a sound. We pulled him away. He was breathing but unresponsive, eyes wide open, locked on something only he could see. His pupils dilated to the point where there was no iris left, just black. We shook him, screamed his name, slapped his face. Nothing. His lips started to move, barely. Whispering. Repeating one phrase over and over again, "She's in me now." We should have run. But we were past that point. The house wouldn't let us leave, and we knew it. The door was gone. Not locked, gone. Replaced by blank wall. The windows? Bricked over from the outside. We were sealed in. The mirror began to hum. A low, resonating tone, like an old violin string held too long. It vibrated through the floor, through our bones. In its reflection, we didn't see ourselves. We saw Elise. Not as a girl anymore, not even as the version we remembered. She was older now. Gaunt. Hair matted with something dark. Eyes no longer empty, but aware. She looked directly at us through the glass. And smiled. She lifted her hand, slowly, and placed it flat against the inside of the mirror. And then a second hand, not hers, rose beside it. We backed away. Something else was in there with her. It had no face, no form, just a shifting blur of darkness behind her, growing taller by the second. Tendrils of shadow coiled around her shoulders like smoke. Elise didn't flinch. She welcomed it. The realization hit us like a punch to the chest. She wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to bring it through. The mirror wasn't a prison. It was a gate. The only way to stop it, we knew, was to break the mirror. But no one moved. We'd tried once before, on an older piece of footage, and the results had nearly killed us. Mirrors shattered, and the pieces kept moving. Whispering. Cutting. One crew member was institutionalized afterward, convinced his reflection was trying to take his place. But this was different. This was the source. It had to end here. I grabbed the sledgehammer we'd brought, just in case, and raised it. The humming intensified. Elise's smile faltered. She tilted her head like a curious child. And then, she spoke. Not aloud. Inside. Inside my head. Asterisk, if you break it, you become me. Asterisk, the words weren't a threat. They were a promise. A trade. I hesitated. Everything inside me screamed to stop, to drop the hammer, to run. But it was too late for any of that. I swung. The first hit sent a crack splintering across the surface. The basement shook, dust raining from the ceiling. Elise's face twisted, not in pain, but pleasure. The shadow behind her surged forward, crashing against the glass like a tidal wave. I swung again. The mirror screamed. Not the sound of breaking glass, but a voice. Thousands of them. Wailing. Begging. Cursing. Elise reached toward me through the spiderweb of cracks, her fingers just inches from the surface. One final swing. The mirror exploded outward, not inward. Shards flew past us in all directions, slicing through air and flesh alike. The sound died instantly, replaced by a heavy silence. A vacuum. As if sound itself had been sucked from the room. And then, she was gone. The mirror, reduced to fragments, lay scattered across the basement floor. Nothing moved. The humming stopped. The pressure lifted. James gasped awake. We stumbled out of the house at dawn. The door had reappeared. The air was warm again. The birds were singing. It was over. Or so we thought. A week passed. Then another. No dreams. No whispers. No Elise. Until the spiral returned. Not in drawings. Not in dreams. In mirrors. In bathrooms, in car windshields, in the reflections of phone screens. A small, almost imperceptible spiral in the corner of the glass. A flicker. A smudge. Easy to ignore. But always there. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you stare long enough, if you look deep enough, the spiral moves. And she looks back. We broke the mirror. We stopped the ritual. But we didn't destroy her. We freed her. So now we ask you, what would you do in this situation? If you saw something staring back that wasn't your own reflection? If a spiral started to appear where there was nothing before? Do you think the protagonist survived? Or did someone else take their place? Look closer. I still don't know why I survived. Maybe I didn't. People always expect a clean ending after a story like this, some satisfying closure, some explanation that makes the horrors digestible. But the truth is, what happened at the Becker house doesn't follow rules. It didn't end just because the mirror broke. If anything, that was just the beginning. After we left the house, things went quiet. The crew scattered, each of us trying to pretend we could return to normal. James was discharged from the hospital with no memory of what had happened to him. Miranda moved out of state, changed her number, and stopped responding to our messages entirely. I tried to piece together everything, to document it honestly, hoping that getting the full story out there would help contain it. Maybe even bury it. But there are gaps, periods of missing time, notes I don't remember writing, footage that reappears after I've deleted it. Sometimes I wake up with the spiral drawn in the condensation on my bathroom mirror. Sometimes it's already there when I walk in. I started recording myself while I sleep. That was a mistake. On the third night, the camera picked up movement, my reflection stepping away from the mirror 5 full seconds after I did. No tricks. No glitches. Just me, and then not me. I haven't checked the tapes since. I tried to move apartments. The realtor said the unit I wanted had already been leased, by me. When I asked for proof, they showed me the signed lease. My name. My signature. A photo ID that looked just like me. Only, the person in the photo was smiling, and I never smiled when it was taken. So here I am, back where it all began, in the same apartment, with the same mirror in the hall. Every attempt to get rid of it fails. I've smashed it. Burned it. Thrown it out. Every morning, it's back, clean, intact, perfectly hung. And I've stopped asking why. Maybe that's what it wants. For you to ask. For you to look. The truth is, Elise didn't die. Not really. She transformed. She became something else, something older, something unbound. She isn't a spirit you can exorcise or a curse you can lift. She's a story that needs to be told. Needs to be heard. The more you know, the more she sees. The more you look for her, the closer she gets. And now that you've seen this, you're part of it, too. That's the final answer, isn't it? The real twist. This was never about saving anyone. It was about spreading her. So ask yourself, when you see a mirror, what's really looking back? When you dream about a girl with long black hair and blank eyes, when you hear humming in the dead of night, when you catch your own reflection lagging behind, will you remember this story? Will you tell someone? Or will you keep it to yourself, thinking you're safe? Because that's how it grows. I've started seeing things in other people's reflections now. On video calls. In store windows. In the shimmer of puddles at night. Faces that shouldn't be there. Smiling. Watching. Waiting. Elise isn't trapped anymore. She's everywhere. I used to think I could stop her. That maybe, if I understood her story enough, if I shared it the right way, I could end it. But it doesn't work like that. She isn't a riddle with a solution. She's a mirror. You don't solve a mirror. You just see yourself, until something else looks back. So that's where this ends. Not with answers. Not with closure. Just with a reflection, and a question. What did you see while you were watching? Did anything flicker behind your screen? Did something feel off? And more importantly, did she notice you? Because now she knows your voice. Your face. Your curiosity. And the mirror? It always wants more. If you've come this far, I have to ask, what would you do now? Would you tell someone about this? Would you dare watch it again? Would you try to forget? Or has the spiral already started? Let us know in the comments below, what do you think really happened to Elise? And more importantly, do you want to know what happens next? Because we still have tapes. We still have names. We still have places we haven't explored. But be careful what you ask for. Some stories don't want to stay buried. Some reflections never fade. And some mirrors don't show you yourself anymore. They show you what's coming. Thanks for watching, if you're still here. We'll see you soon. Or maybe, she will. Asterisk, screen fades to black. But just before it cuts, the faint outline of a spiral appears on the screen's corner. And in its center, a single eye slowly opens. Asterisk, you might already know the answer, if you've made it this far, maybe you felt it too. That strange stillness. That chill that seemed to come from beyond the screen. Maybe you saw something, in the corner, in the shadows, or behind your reflection. Maybe it was just a story, or maybe, something followed you here. Let's ask a question that's been on everyone's mind. What would you do in this situation? Would you open the door? Would you face the reflection? Or would you run, knowing that sometimes, the thing you're running from is already inside? Tell us what you think in the comments. Seriously, we read them all. And you're not alone. If you've experienced something strange, something unexplainable, share it. Someone else watching might have seen or felt the same thing. That's how it all begins, right? With a whisper, with a story. And if this one got under your skin, if it kept you on the edge, made you pause before looking in a mirror, or left you wondering what's real, hit that like button. It tells us you want more. More haunted houses, more real accounts, more unexplained footage from places no one dares to revisit. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because this was just one of many chilling tales we're about to uncover. Every week, we release full paranormal documentaries, based on real events, real people, and real horrors. Some stories are buried for a reason. We dig them up. Carefully. Quietly. But they don't always stay buried. Who knows? Our next investigation might be somewhere near you. A forgotten asylum. An abandoned school. A town that no longer appears on any map. Or maybe, somewhere you've already been. And if you don't want to miss it, turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the next story drops. Because sometimes, it's the first viewer who sees something the rest of us missed. A face in the window. A shadow in the background. A whisper in the static. Think of this as more than just a channel. It's a community for the curious, the brave, and the ones who aren't afraid to stare into the dark a little longer than they should. So again, what would you do? Would you go back inside? Would you break the mirror? Or would you leave the house, and take a piece of it with you? Let us know in the comments. And if you want a sequel to this story, if you think there's more to Elise's haunting, and you want us to go deeper, tell us. Thanks for watching. But remember, some stories don't end when the video does. They begin when you look away. We'll see you next time. Maybe. Unless she finds you first.